Alright, so let me be quite clear about the intent of this video. This video is entirely to prove Mr. Cynical wrong, because him and I had a discussion in a YouTube comment section about how music is too subjective to be really discussed. So I'm gonna provide a kind of analysis for a 16-minute long EP from Crim3s, which is a British witch house duo. I misspoke, I'm not going to edit this out, it's 1 AM, fuck it. This is on my secondary channel. I could just be silent for 30 seconds, that'd be par for the course. Anyway, Crim3s, their self-titled EP, it's 16 minutes long, 5 songs. I'll get right into it. The first, this is, I should probably mention, this is going to be like a lyrical analysis, because, well, the sound is pretty much exactly like a much more popular witch house duo called Crystal Castles, and they don't do a lot of interesting things with the synthesizers or the sounds. I think I haven't listened to any of their other, well, I say their other EP. They've done one other EP, so I don't know if their sound really evolves, but from what I can gather, it's very samey in this entire EP. So first of all, their first song, Breed, seems to be the vocalist, or seems to be about the vocalist having trouble sustaining meaningful relationships despite the best efforts of apparently everyone involved. I should note at this point that during the writing of this EP, the duo were homeless, and they did write songs apparently pretty much everywhere. I think they said like in the garage, under a tunnel, on a road or something. So the verses in this song come in pairs, each of them referring to a group of people that the vocalist has pushed away. The first of such groups are the people which would most likely be the family, or her dearests. She predicts that, little do they know, their family won't be able to take care of her, and the next few lines seem to indicate the vocalist second-guessing whether or not she really needs her family. She says, "Am I really, do you need?" It's sort of ambiguous, she doesn't know what's going on. She says, the line, "a life is just pretend," seems to indicate that she finds it difficult to envision what it would be like to not have her family around. It's sort of, she feels that her life is, it doesn't really matter if she loses her family, everything's gonna be fine. It's when people, it's basically the opposite of what happens when somebody says that X is not a game. It's like, yeah, this is real. Then the next verse is pretty much her prediction being proven right, that her family won't be able to take care of her, and at the end of the verse she has the kind of realization that her life is indeed real and not something to mess around with as she perhaps thought that it was. The next set of verses are in a similar format with regard to her friends of friends, which could either be her best friends or literal friends of her friends. Either way, it follows exactly the same format as last time. She says that they won't talk to her, but to her disbelief they actually do begin to talk to her. She realizes she likes the human interaction, hence the line, "now I need," which seems to imply that she feels she needs it. Her friends laugh at what's pretend, which could mean that they laugh at the prospect of losing her friendship, which they feel is a pretend or unlikely outcome. Her friends ultimately find they can't talk to her and that the friendship breaks down. She again questions as to whether or not she needs friends, and the verse ends with her laughing at what's pretend, as the line is. Since her friendship has broken down, has become pretend, this could mean that she enjoys thinking about what it is like to have friends, but ultimately recognises it as being pretend, since she feels her relationships are doomed to failure. This is a pretty much perfect segue into the last set of verses, which are concerned with potential romantic partners. That wasn't a perfect segue, I don't even know why I said that. Either way, she predicts that romantic partners won't cross paths with her, but again, to her disbelief, she finds something which seems to resemble a romantic relationship. The line, "were we really," indicates that she isn't really sure whether or not it qualifies as a romantic relationship, and "do we need" raises the question as to whether or not they even need to be in a relationship. The line, "our life is just pretend," could be interpreted to mean both, that their entire relationship was just pretend, it wasn't romantic, or even it didn't exist, or the line could mean that, same as it did in the first verse, in that, life, it isn't real, this X is not real, sort of thing. I'm doing a terrible job at explaining it, but maybe you know what I mean. and ultimately the relationship doesn't pan out and it ends up ending. She laments that with the statement that they can't cross paths with her. If she feels, she sees again for the final time that her life is not pretend, and it absolutely does matter if she fucks up. Same as in the end of the first verse. She realizes, hey, wait a second, that's not a joke. Gotta take it seriously. Now this next song is Germs, which seems to be a little bit more obfuscated than the last one, but coupled with the disenfranchised feeling of the instrumental, it seems to be from the perspective of one party in opposition to another party, whose conflict is made up of misunderstanding each other. Now the only clue as to who this actually is comes from the term the hidden plague, but that just might be a flavor text or a random thing. I don't know. I don't know. It might also just be the political left versus right debate, which, is common and not unlikely. So whoever the other party is, they apparently never made a better rage, which would actually support the idea of it being a political conflict like this. Since political views are so widespread in the general population, I honestly don't know what would be a larger source of anger. Repeated through the song is the sentiment that the vocalist wants to be the enemy of the other party, and they want the other party to be an enemy of them. The verse, "You know your every thought, I dreamed it once, I've seen it all," seems to admit that the vocalist's character has dreamed of their opponent's viewpoint, and concludes that they now know everything about it from a terribly small and inaccurate level of understanding. The last verse suggests that there was a great distance between the two parties, and that the distance is comprised of what is, called the unexplained, were the two parties to resolve their conflict peacefully, and by carefully explaining their viewpoints to each other, the division between them might lessen. The vocalist tries to instigate further conflict at the end of the verse by saying that their losing game puts you to shame, which is again very much in character for what we understand about this conflict. That's pretty much all I have on Germs, but that's okay. Next we can go to Salt, and this one's a bit more clear again. I'm pretty confident that this song is about insecurity in general, and the vocalist is directly playing the character of a person or the listener's insecurities. The song starts by some weird, slowed down, distorted words saying, "What's planted grows, its rumours stain," which is most likely a reference to the idea of a small passing remark turning into a permanent source of worry and anxiety. Small inserts may grow to become much more problematic points of insecurity later on. This happens, you know what I'm on about. There's an interesting dichotomy here also between the use of the words sunburnt and suntanned quite quickly afterwards, which seems to be used to just show that like a fashionable action, like suntanning, is in some way equatable to being sunburned, something which is very painful and a lot more harmful, and this is definitely congruous with the rest of the song. The line regarding slitting the tongues of the mockingbird could be taken in a couple of ways. The mockingbird is, as the name would suggest, quite good at making noises. Its most defining feature is that it can make interesting sounds with its mouth, and to cut the tongue of the mockingbird is to effectively remove its most valuable asset. The voice of insecurity seems to encourage the listener to cut themselves down so as to not stand out as anything other than ordinary. The bit where she says, "You will never speak the same," immediately afterwards, could be taken to either be a continuation of the last line, or it could be to encourage the listener to not repeat the things that seeded these insecurities. Since this line is actually doubled, it's most likely both of them. The chorus, which is "eat less, much less, insults will not be fed," seems to be a fairly direct reference to eating disorders, as does the next line, both of which are, obviously generally born of anxiety. The former seems to be a direct response to being called overweight and an intense desire to not be, while the line "eat more, much more, your palms will not be red" could be taken to be indicative of a general withdrawal from allowing one's own intentions to be read for fear of being made fun of. The next line, "talk, fake and tell to sell," is another clear message which seems to urge the listener to relentlessly present themselves as positively as possible. A grin without a chin could be a reference to forced positivity, as well as just sounding a bit like it's making reference to a skull, which generally doesn't have a jawbone attached. Maybe that one's a stretch, but whatever. Now, finally, Pierced Ears of a Scavenger is likely the same deal as earlier with the Mockingbird, just with a different animal and a different feature. Ears and the ability to hear, rather than the tongue and the ability to speak. Now, the second to last song, I don't really have much on this. I'm significantly less clear on this one overall, but it seems to be the vocalist trying to recover a lost relationship. She asks, "Do you know this weakened frame?" which would imply that whoever she's speaking to or directing this to should clearly recognise who she is. She holds out hope for recovering this relationship by asserting repeatedly and impassionately that she hasn't changed and that she is indeed still the same. This is repeated several times, and the last time she says that she will never change, which implies that she's planning on holding out hope for recovering this relationship in the future, no matter how much damage that causes to both herself and potentially the other party. Also, I assume that tears of poison from broken shame alludes to generally painful feelings. I'm not so clear on that one. The last song, named Fade, seems to be on the topic of the vocalist feeling just generally helpless against the terrible and not good world. She says that from a minute to a day she's fed with air that's cut. The air being cut could be a reference to environmental pollution. I don't know, again, maybe a stretch, but anything's possible. I honestly don't know what the line from the voice of the week that knows it's not enough means. I've thought about it, but you know what, I'm tired, and I've concluded that it's either that I'm just tired and in the morning I'll feel stupid, or it's just incomprehensible in this context. The term the voice of the week has a clear rallying tone to it, but that's all I can really glean from here. She says that she stands not far from the passing shoulders who thought they stood alone, which again has some implication of people rallying, possibly around her, but also maybe not. It's difficult to say. The chorus asks, "Who's that dreaming no truth?" which is one of the more important lines in this song, which seems to imply that nice and pleasant dreams are in no way truthful or accurate to the real world, which is not nice and not pleasant, both of which are unfortunately accurate. So she says that forgiveness for memory, which seems to imply a very hands-off approach to dealing with the planet. She gains forgiveness for the cost of memory and is she's willing to forgive the world for being so terrible, as long as she is able to forget about how terrible it is. She says that she refuses to know a world, which again means she doesn't want to know how terrible everything is, and she says that between me and myself I can't meet a world, which seems to be a more personal take on the line I previously discussed. She initially says that she initially takes the tougher refusal stance, where, she it's it. She doesn't want it. She doesn't want to, see the world. She doesn't want to deal with that. And then the next line, she can't take. What's the line? I can't even remember. I don't have the lines written in front of me, which is why I'm stuttering so much, because I didn't set this up. Okay, the lines are right here. So yeah, she says she refuses to know a world, which is a much more impersonal and a much more. She feels she's in control of the situation. And then the much more personal, between me and myself, I can't meet a world, which would imply that, personally, between me and myself, she doesn't feel that she can meet the world, which is a slightly different aspect to it there. And there you go. That's almost as long as the actual EP. Most of this was just to deal with Mr. Cynical, because he was wrong, and I need him to know that he's wrong. That's important to me. But either way, yeah, I like this EP. My general opinion on this EP is that it's pretty good. This isn't really, I don't know if what the crossover between review and analysis is, but this is somewhere in between, and I like it. It's good. I give it like an 8 out of 10. It's kind of derivative of Crystal Castles, but Crystal Castles are also good, and this EP has a very consistent sound, if you don't want to call it samey, and that sound is the Crystal Castle sound from like Violent Youth or something. It's very it's something, and it's all the same thing. I was going to say something, but I forgot what it was, which is why I'm just sort of stalling for time, because if I just left a 30-second gap in the middle of the video, people would probably switch it off. But on the other hand, this is my secondary channel, so nobody's watching this to begin with. Maybe Outlaw Harvest is watching this. Hello Outlaw Harvest, it's me, your boy Alex Horatio, making videos on this alternate channel specifically for you. Except I made this video just for me, so that's fine. Anyway, yeah, Crim3s, they're good. Check them out, goodbye.